member of International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants, chairpersons and excom of all GCC chapter and overseas chapters, members from across the globe, and guests. Good evening, everyone. My name is C.A. Neeraj Ritolia, Chairman of ICAI Abu Dhabi chapter. Ramadan Kareem to each and everyone and to your loved one as well. May this blessed month of Ramadan takes us out of this weird situation and very unusual COVID-19 scenario. In the past, the GCC chapters used to collaborate and come together during international conferences. But now we have joined hands virtually and collaborated for a joint GCC chapter webinar. Thanks to CA Mahesh Kumar, who took this initiative. All the chapters are continuing the journey of learning through webinars. Today's topic of Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants, Significant Changes, which is extremely important for all the chartered accountants to be aware of. Ethics is the most important pillar of our profession, and worldwide ICAI are looked upon for their ethics and knowledge. I'm sure that the members and the chapters are doing their bit and are engaged in helping out the less fortunate one during this current situation. We appeal all the members to put their foot forward and continue to generously contribute towards this cause locally at their Karam Bhumi as well as in the PM Cares Fund through ICAI. You all are aware that Prime Minister has congratulated ICAI and our President C.A. Atulji for our commitment toward this cause. The PDC events through webinar gives us an opportunity to learn as well as earn CPE hours unstructured learning. Please get in touch with your excom if you find any difficulty in getting this CPE hours. The event flow for today is keynote address by ICAI President, followed by our technical session, Q&A session, closing comments, valedictory session. Questions to be asked in the Q&A chat box, which will be moderated by one of our panelists towards the end. Mic and video of the participants will be in mute form by the organizer. I request everyone to follow all the guidelines by the local authorities and the government and be safe and be healthy. Now I give it over to CA Anish Mehta, Chairman of Dubai chapter, to take the proceedings further. Thank you. Unmute, Anish ji.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Neeraj, for the very precise opening note. Thank you very much. I welcome C. Atul Kumar Gupta, President ICAI, and Mr. Sanjeev Chaudhary, to whom I've just spoken in brief last night. Welcome all the chairperson of all the chapters who have contributed in this seminar, and welcome all the participants from Dubai chapter and all the other overseas chapter. So I've been given a task to introduce a person who actually requires no introduction, but it's my privilege to introduce him. And as Sanjeev ji a few minutes back, he was saying that he works for almost 15-16 hours a day. So I can correlate one quote with it, that of Peter F. Drucker: management is doing the right thing, but leadership is doing the right things. I'm sure our president, as you know, every day is attending so many webinars and so many relevant webinars and particularly that global webinar, which was attended by 80,000 plus people, has taken the ICAI into the record books. So thank you for that. Let me introduce our president. Introduction is quite large, but I'll try to brief it out. C. Atul Kumar Gupta, a man with astute intellect and quick understanding and sharp vision. C. Atul Kumar Gupta has been elected as the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants for the term 2021. Having served the profession for about 2 decades, he joined the Central Council of ICAI in 2013, wherein he remained a member for 2 consecutive terms, that is 2013 to 16 and 2016 to 19. Widely respected for his strong organizational skills and deep insight in the affairs of profession, CA Atul Gupta has immensely contributed to the cause of profession in the last 2 decades. With his commitment, dedicated and service to the profession, he endeavors to take profession to the new Zentils. and you must be experiencing in last few months, and also come up with the expectation of stakeholders consequently. With straightforward approach to the profession, he has always been concerned about the quality of services and expectations of his professional colleagues and their aspirations. He has always been concerned, profusely interested in the brand Indian CA and ICA. He has always volunteered to act as a bridge between the stakeholders and the institute. Here, a very important point. This is the first time someone is also looking at framing the foreign policy, especially for the overseas chapters and overseas countries. He symbolizes the transformational perspective, which is going to be crucial for relevance of all economic entities and more particularly regulators, so that the transformation addresses the expectation gap while being focal to upholding transparency, probity, and trust as the guiding virtues for the work program of ICA in times to come. Being the ardent reformer, he has a holistic grasp on the imperative of digital transformation, the developments taking nationally and globally in regard to the accounting profession, and through his experience in public life over more than 2 decades, he intends to metamorphose the overall regulatory perspective as laid under the Enabling Act and regulation governing the chartered accountancy profession. We heartily welcome you, Sri Atul Kumar Gupta sir.
Thank you, Anish bhai, for a nice introduction, and maybe I have deserved the same or not, but thanks to all of you. Very respected, my elder brother, CA Sanjeev Chaudhary ji, the member of the International Ethical Standard Board, all the respected chairman and chairperson of various countries, our chapters in the various countries. I can name everybody: Mushtaq ji, Sai ji, Ashwin madam, Mahesh ji, Neeraj ji, Anish ji, and all the viewers of this particular webinar being organized jointly by all the GCC chapters of ICAI. And I'm aware that the topic is very, very important, because as rightly mentioned by Anish bhai, that I am of that kind of I will say approach that when we are talking about the profession, we are talking about the trust, we are talking about the respect of the profession. It actually came from the the conduct of the members, the quality of the services we are offering to the society, and the contribution we are giving to developing nation. That is something we all aspire, and because of that only we carry the such a respect in the for the profession, that you can go anywhere in the world, and if you will tell that I am a chartered accountant, everybody will see you with a respect that, oh, you are a chartered accountant from India. So that is something like that. Friends, I used to say that the profession should organize more and more number of programs on the less populist topic. So in India, we have the GST, income tax, and bank audit are the hot selling topics. And in case of a GCC, we have the banking, private equity, and all these things are more hot selling topic. But I always used to say that we should organize at least some minimum number of programs on the accounting standard, that is IFRS, Ind AS, some programs on the standard of auditing, and very, very important is about the code of ethics. Friends, in the last few months, when even in the able leadership of the then President Prafulla Chatterjee, and I was working as a vice president, and continuing that endeavor, in the last few months, we have taken a lot of new initiatives for the benefit of the members. And since I'm addressing to the members who are outside India, and so I will be keeping my few initiatives taken by the ICAI related to their domain, rather than speaking about the some initiative we have taken for the in general. Friends, you are aware that we started last year, we passed in the council that members can pay the 10-year fees at one go, because there are the challenges when you are paying every year, and then there may be some miss, and then there will be a problem. So I just wish to share with you that from the 1st of April 2020, we have initiated the process of taking the 10 years fees in advance. And I just wish to tell you that even if there will be any escalation, inflation of the prior fees, and during during this particular, I will say the block of 10 years, then there will not be any impact on the members. There will be no demand from the ICAI to pay the balance of the fees in case there is any inflation is there. At the same time, as rightly mentioned by Anish Bhai, that we have initiated the first ever the foreign policy of the ICAI, which talks about that how the ICAI will become a truly global body. Today, what is happening that our members are qualifying in India, but they are migrating for their career and the other objective outside India, and then they are creating the chapters and so on. But we are looking at how we can have even the students from the overseas jurisdiction, how we can take the leadership at the global forums, how we can have the more and more representation available in the various part of the world, then how we can have a more cohesive working among all the professionals who are working at the different part of the world. So we have started a process wherein we are working on the foreign policy of the ICAI. At the same time, we have started a new concept called a REP office, that is representative office. And I'm happy to intimate you that in the very short span of last, I will say the less than 35 days when we started this process, we are in a position to create around 20 representative offices at the different part of the world, and later on they all will become the chapters, full-fledged chapters, and that will be I will say a good concept of networking will emerge from there. Friends, I just wish to share with you that few days before we have launched a special purpose group wherein we are developing the international curriculum of ICAI. So one curriculum will be there for the members who are like in India, but at the same time we are working to develop an international curriculum for the students of the overseas jurisdiction, and after the government approval will be there, the necessary approval from the act and the government will be there, and all the process will be completed for the international curriculum. We will be launching the international curriculum. I'm not aware when it will be, but maybe down the line 6 months, maybe down the line 1 year, but that will be a new beginning from the ICAI to become really a global body. Friends, I just wish to share with you that we are also working very aggressively on the various MRAs and MOUs. We are already in pipeline with discussion with the various professional bodies across the world, and even taking the membership of like the ASEAN, the Accountancy Europe, and so on, so that there will be more and more networking coordination between the international professional institutes as well as with the India. Friends, you are aware that last year we successfully received the benchmarking of qualification with the NARIC, and I believe that that will give a very good benefit, very important benefit to the members who are at least in the GCC countries. But at the same time, we are also working to see that this similar kind of recognition, equivalency for the qualification will be there from the other continents as well. Friends, as all of you are aware, that all of you will agree with me that because of this corona pandemic kind of a situation and the lockdown, everything is a standstill. But you will all also agree with me that during this period we have not lose even a single minute, and we thankfully we have the two very important initiatives we took in the last few years. That is, one is the digital learning hub, the another is a self-service portal. So all the communication from the members and students is completely seamless, completely problemless, and any hurdle is not there, and the members are getting all the services from the institute through the SSP portal. And at the same time, the digital learning hub, which is actually the repository of the entire knowledge bank of the ICAI, wherein even we are now launching the certificate courses online. And even I can tell you that the members from the New Zealand, members from the other continents are also who are the chartered accountants are also joining all these virtual certificate courses through the digital learning hub. And of course, that digital learning hub is without any charge to all the members and the students, and even you can get the structured CPR through the digital learning hub, as compared to we are doing only the unstructured CPR. Because when you are going for a person on a physical meet, then only you are getting the structured CPR. But through the digital learning hub, without paying any single any charge, you can take the structured CPR from the digital learning hub. That is the beauty of that. So ultimately, friends, with all this, we have number of other initiatives, because the time is there that we are all eager to hear the Sanjeev Chaudhary ji on the very important topic. But I just wish to share with you that we all are working to give you a wow kind of experience, being a second largest professional body across the world. Now, when we are talking about the topic, that is code of ethics, which is very close to my heart as well. As you are aware that last year we completed more than 400, we disposed of more than 400 disciplinary cases to see that even the iota of error committed by the member should be addressed immediately, and there should be a next level of trust on the profession, which we are all aspiring for. Now, friends, when we are talking about the code of ethics, because that is very close to my heart, and every time I'm used to say that the branches and the regional council and even the chapters should organize more and more program on the code of ethics. First of all, we need to understand what is the code of ethics means. Friends, what is the difference between a businessman and a professional? If you all will agree with me, it is the code of ethics, which is actually the only difference between and very important difference between the businessman and a professional. A professional is a person who is also doing a commercial activity, who is also serving the society, but with a certain code of ethics. He is bound with the certain codes that, okay, I will follow this kind of a principle, I will follow this disciplinary, this kind of a discipline, this kind of a activity, that I will be abiding with the code which is laid down by my parent institute, that is the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. So first of all, we need to see that in case we want to remain as a professional, we want to continue to get a respect as a professional, each one of us, there is a responsibility that we all follow the code of ethics. Friends, what is ICAI? Please try to understand. The ICAI, if you will see the act, ICAI means we, the members of the institute, hereby constitute a body corporate called the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. So whatever we are doing, it is actually the ICAI which is doing. If we will do good, it will be the ICAI doing good. If somebody will do bad, it is the ICAI members are not doing bad. So something we need to understand, that even if iota of I will say the omission or the negligence is there on my part, it is not only the person who is getting affected, but it is the entire fraternity getting affected. Friends, so to repose the trust from the society, to take this trust to the next level, it is very important that we all need to follow the code of ethics. And you are aware that in case there is any divergence from the code of ethics, there is a very strong disciplinary mechanism available in the ICAI, which giving the range of the punishment from a penalty to even the permanent removal of the member, falling under the different clauses. So it is not only it is good for the trust and the goodwill of the profession, but also it is very important to sustain our qualification that we follow all the code of ethics. Friends, you are all aware that we all are falling under, we are all actually one or the other way, that we all are doing this commercial activity. We are engaged in this commercial activity. We are providing the services to the different stakeholders. For certainly monetary considerations are there. So again, it is very important that the code of ethics should carry all the guidance available to the member, that what kind of activity you can do, what kind of activity you can't do. And Sanjeev ji will agree with me, and even he will deliberate on that the code of ethics has a responsibility as well towards the member, that create an enabling environment for the members, so that the member can do the activity with much ease while maintaining the discipline in the profession. And that's why the code of ethics, which was there in 2009, is now recently being revised in the 2019, which is going to applicable from the 1st of July 2020, which carry a lot of things which are there for even for the beneficial to the members at large. Yes, I'm aware that there is a provision related to no CLAR, which talks about that a person who is giving the assurance services has to give a certification that all the laws applicable in that particular organization are being complied with. He has to report in case from a single client more than 15% revenue is coming. But at the same time, there are the numerous new provisions which will become an enabler for a chartered accountant, whether he is into the practice or otherwise. That, like for example, he can start giving the sponsorship of the various events. He can pay the referral fees. He can author the book and write the name as a CA, as a author in that. For advertisement guidelines, there are the certain carve-outs being created. So what I'm trying to convey you that while the code of ethics give us a kind of a cautious approach, that okay, while using this skepticism in your assurance services, you have to be very cautious as well while rendering the services, that I should be abiding with the code of ethics. The code of ethics also provide the enabling environment, that what all activities you can do while remaining within the code of ethics. And I believe that deliberation by Sanjeev ji will explain each one of us, including myself, that okay, what all new things are there in the new code of ethics, and what all code of ethics we need to abide to take the glory of this profession to the newer height. And with this, I once again thank you to all my chairmen for the various GCC chapters, and even thanks to elder brother Sanjeev ji for sparing his valuable time, and all the chapters for giving this opportunity. A happy learning to all of you. for this new, I will say the new code of ethics, which is going to be applicable from the 1st of July 2020. Friends, apart from this, I just wish to share with you that we are putting a lot of new material on the code of ethics on the digital learning hub. So you please also take the facility of the digital learning hub to upgrade yourself on the various clauses related to code of ethics. And last but not the least, my apology that I'm just coming back, that last but not the least, I just wish to share with you that it is not the code of ethics are applicable only on the member who is in practice. The code of ethics are even certain code of ethics are there, which are even applicable to the members who are into the employment, who are in the industry. So it is not that the members in practice has to bother about that. I can just tell you, for example, in the section 22, there are the cases which are there on the members who are in the industry. Why? Because they have taken the COP as well as they were in the employment. And because of that, there were certain cases. I can give you the name of the case also, that wherein the members was held guilty, holding the COP and working in a industry. So there are the numerous clauses which are applicable even on the member in industry as well. And that's even one side that give a responsibility, another side that give a authenticity of your qualification, because everybody is aware that, okay, you are a chartered accountant, meaning thereby you are under the code of ethics, meaning thereby I can rely upon you that you will be doing the best of your services to my profession, to my industry, to my company, and that gives a different kind of a image, that kind of a different kind of a respect to our profession. So over to Anish and over to MOC and Sanjeev.
Thank you, Atul sir. Thank you for your so knowledgeable insights. And we have already started receiving comments in the WhatsApp group for the nice initiatives and the initiatives which were never thought of, including the 10-year fee provision, including the international curriculum. So thank you for your talk. Thank you very much. On behalf of all the chairpersons and all the chapters, we wish to give you a token of appreciation. I would like Mahesh Kumar to show on the screen. So this is a certificate of appreciation, which we will send you by email also, but we want to show it here as well. So thank you very much. Now we will move to our session, the topic of the day, and I would like Ms. Ashwini to please introduce our eminent speaker of the day. Ashwini ji.
Thank you, Anish bhai. And good afternoon to all the senior colleagues, co-professionals, Muscat chapter members, and all the CA professionals from the other chapters and across the world who have joined this webinar. I'm Ashwini Savrikar, chairperson of the Muscat chapter of ICAI and co-host of this webinar. And this is a very pertinent and applicable to all kind of topic that we have today. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you the speaker for the day, CA Sanjeev Kumar Chaudhary. So when I read his profile, friends, I knew we couldn't have had a more appropriate speaker than him. Not just it's his 37 years of professional experience in domestic and international taxation, tax advisory, consulting areas, but also his work experience with small and medium firms as well as with big four firms, which gives him a breadth of experience. Most importantly for me, he was the chairman of the Ethics Standard Board of the ICAI in 2018-19, and he has played a very key role in revising our institute's code of ethics, which we all are supposed to follow, as President Sir also rightly mentioned about it. Add to that, CA Sanjeev is a member of the International Ethics Standards Board for accountants, which is ESBA, and something we need to be all proud of because he's the first Indian to be on this board. I was having a word with Sanjeev ji today morning, and he believes that ethics cannot be taught or forced, but it needs to be part of your value system. He draws his ethical values from stalwarts in the profession, which he had a chance to work with early on in his career. And now he's interacting with various international bodies on ethics-related topics. Ladies and gentlemen, you would rightly agree with me that we couldn't have got a better person to talk about this subject to us and enlighten us on the topic of ethics. Please join me in welcoming CA Sanjeev ji. And now, without much further ado, I hand over to you, CA Sanjeev ji. Please, you may please unmute your mic and take over the proceedings. CA Sanjeev ji.
Thank you very much, Ashwini ji, for the kind words. Thanks to my president for being with us in spite of his busy schedule of probably attending so many webinars every day from morning till evening and doing the administrative responsibility of being the president of the institute and interacting with the ministries and so on and so forth. It's a tough job. He's a young chap, broad, strong shoulders. So thanks to him for leading the profession. Thanks to Mahesh and my other friends on the on whom I can see Mushtaq ji, Anish ji, Sai, Mahesh, etc. for giving me this opportunity of sharing my thoughts. So I think, can I now share the screen and put the PPT which is there for everyone to see?
Yes, sir. We can see now.
So I hope it is now visible to everyone. So
yes,
first
yes,
of all, I think I must thank the Institute and the Secretary of the Ethical Standards Board in putting together this PPT. This PPT is quite detailed. It has about 80 odd slides, or effectively maybe 70 odd slides. And I have an hour approximately, or an hour and 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll be guided by, please tell me, 5 minutes before when I need to stop, and I'll make sure that, we abide by the time. So I may not be able to cover all the slides completely because this is a PPT which has been prepared by the Institute as a common PPT to be shared by all the speakers, so that the thought process and the points which are being conveyed are similar and the same and coming right from the horse's mouth, which is the Institute, for the benefit of all of us. Having said that, I must say, at the outset, that this presentation only covers significant changes. It is not, a substitute. So it covers only significant changes. And if one looks at this, it is not a complete code. So the members may still have to go back and look at the codes for the detailed provisions. This presentation only covers significant provisions in the code and a comparison as to what was the code in 2009, which is the present code, which is still applicable as you speak today, and what is the future going to be effective 1st of July 2020, which is around the corner, 2 months down the line. Very briefly, the present code. So I probably use the word present code or Code of Ethics 2009, which is the existing code, and the code which is coming in, the revised code, is the 2019 code because it was passed in 2019 by the council, but it is going to be effective from July 20. So that's the small part which all of us have to remember during this presentation. My present code has two parts, part A and part B, which will be valid and is valid till 30th June 2020. So it is not going away anywhere. Part A is based on the ISBA code, and part B is based on what is my domestic provisions, my CA Act, my CA regulations, my Companies Act, etc. Now, Code of Ethics 2019 has been revised after the revision which took place in the earlier code, which was done, as I think the presidents are also mentioned, in 2009. So it is after a gap of about 8-10 years that we have taken the charge of revising the code, and in between the code had taken and undergone various changes. The 2009 code was based on the ISBA code of 2005. So it is almost after more than 10 odd years that we have looked at the international code to revise the code. Our present code is in 3 volumes. Volume 1, which is bases the ISBA code of ethics. Volume 2, which will be available shortly. It is the final points are being looked at to, make it available to the members. And I think maybe in a next couple of days, it should be on the website, which basically, as I said initially, covers my local provisions, my CA Act, my different schedules, my council guidelines, my Indian Companies Act, other regulations, etc., which are effective and which needs to be looked at by the members. And what the present council has done, it has created a part 3 also, which keeps and brings us the relevant disciplinary cases which has been decided by the institute, by the council, which gives the guidance to the members. So instead of having 3 parts in one place and make it a very thick book, we have, the council has divided this into part 1, 2, and 3. Part 1 and 3 are available at the website, free of cost, downloadable. Part 2 will be available in the next couple of days. The part A, as I think Atulji mentioned, was revised by the council in February 19. When I was there in the council and my second term was finishing. And at that time, the council decided in its wisdom that the code should be made applicable from the next 1st of April, so that the part B also will be ready and the members will have the opportunity to become aware of the provisions of this code. Because there are a lot of provisions which are new, members need to be aware about it. So that is the reason a time lag of 12 to 14 months was decided. Since part B was approved by the council, I think in February 2020, the council felt 1st April 2020 will be too soon, and let's make it effective 1st July 2020. As the president sir mentioned, this code now will be applicable from 1st July 2020. And they are, they've done a number of programs in the last year, current year to, bring awareness. I think another step which has been taken by the current council is that the e-code will also be available very soon. So it will be very user-friendly. ICAI has already done an e-code of the Code of Ethics. Our institute also is taking steps to make this code available to all of us on our e-code, so that if you want to look at any provision while you're driving, you can, on your iPad or on your maybe mobile also, the code will be accessible to you. Now, first I'll take up the main provisions in volume 1. So if I look at what are the 5 most important substantive changes which have happened in the code. The first one is, and as I think the president sir mentioned, responding to non-compliance of laws and regulations. It is briefly, in simple words, called NOCRAR. And I'll touch upon this in greater detail, but this is one significant provision which has changed and which imposes a lot of responsibility on the members. And there was a lot of discussions, should we have this or not? But I think in the end, the council decided that I think it is good to have it. And it is there now. The second is, as per the 2009 code, there is practically no prohibition on providing taxation services to audit clients. Slowly and steadily, what is being observed is that there should be some restrictions, because the threats which it creates, you see, when an auditor gives a tax advice to a client, are you doing a self-review of your own advice? Are you creating some threats? So there is a restriction on certain taxation services to be provided to audit clients. So there is a shift from almost no prohibition to some prohibition. Can you have management responsibility for your audit clients? There was no such provision in the code, and I think the idea was that there should be a prohibition, but this 2009 code very clearly has a section which deals with that a member of the institute cannot have a management responsibility for its audit clients, because ultimately then you are doing a management function and audit function which cannot be allowed. There was a provision in 2009 code on whether and what should be the quantum of fees which you can get from an audit client, a single audit client or its associates. So there has been some shift in that also. That also I'll discuss as we go along. And the last, I think, is again a very important change, that the independence standards to be looked at and what is the breach of those standards have been picked up and have been brought into this code instead of keeping it somewhere else. There was no such provision in the 2009 code also. So these are 5 substantive changes. There are other changes also, but these are the 5 most important substantive changes. If I look at quickly, what are the structural changes also in this code? The independence requirements for audit and review and the other assurance engagements have been differentiated. So audit and review is at one place, and other assurance engagements are at different place. So the independence standards, which are different for both, they have been codified separately. The independence section now has been recharacterized as international independence standards. In the earlier code, there was no such characterization. The other important change is the word should has been replaced by shall. And this is a very important change because you should do this, and instead of you shall do this, will make an all important change. And this code actually captures all those changes and all those clauses where you're supposed to do a particular thing with the word shall with a R in front. So as we go through the code, I'll explain that certain provisions of the code are carrying a character R in front of it. And the word in that clause will be shall and not should or may. So that's one big change which has happened now. There is a restructuring of the sections, which is again a structural change. And there is an increased clarity of responsibility for compliance on a member, on a network firm, or an individual, etc., which was not so very clear in the earlier code. So this new code actually, as I was talking to Ashwini in the afternoon earlier today, ISBA has revised the code in 2010, 12, 14, 16, and 18. So every 2 years, the code was revised internationally. I think somewhere we were lagging behind. We caught up in 2018. So when I think we were the third or the fourth country in the world to have a revised code following the ISBA 2018 code. So today, latest code with ISBA is the 2018 code, which India is also following with effect from 1st July 2020. So these are the 5, again, important structural changes. The word professional accountant has been used in this code. And what is the meaning of the word professional accountant? It is defined as an individual who is a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. The ISBA code uses the word professional accountants in professional practice and professional accountants in business. So people who are employed, the ISBA uses the word professional accountants in business. Whereas we have been using the word professional accountants in service. So if I look at our CA Act 1949 also, it uses the word professional accountants in service. So what we have done is, when we in the sense as a council, the code was finalized, we have kept the word professional accountants in service, and we have not used the word business as is being used in the ISBA code. If you look at the 2009 code, it has Part A and Part B, and this slide basically captures what is contained in Part A and Part B. I think one can pass the slide. Basically, again, picking up things which I've already explained. B has domestic Indian provisions. A has the Code of Ethics, which is general provisions, Chapter 2 and 3, which is in accountants in public practice, and members in service. I think I may point out here, our institute is a member of IFAC. And as a member of the IFAC, we have a responsibility to look at what IFAC is doing and follow those things to the extent we need to follow them and conform to that. And in case there are certain things which our country requires and wants us to deal it in a different way, we can make those changes. So ICAI has an obligation to look at what is internationally happening and, to the extent possible, probably look at those provisions and bring it in our codes also as we go along. So this is the overview of our code, volume 1, and we are right now referring to volume 1. So volume 1, part 1 actually covers how do you comply with the code? What are the fundamental principles which the members have to look at? And what is the conceptual framework? How will you apply these fundamental principles? Part 2 then deals with only the professional accountants in service. I think the presidents have also mentioned that it is not that members in practice have to follow the code. It is members in service also who have to follow the code. So part 2 deals with professional accountants in service. Part 3 deals with professional accountants in public practice. Now, part 4A and 4B are the most bulky provisions which deal with the independence standards, which is in a way the backbone, how you remain independent, what should you look at, what services you can provide, what services you can't provide. And part 4A basically deals with independence standards when you're looking at audits and the review engagements. and part B deals with independence for other assurance engagements. So there is a separate, there may be some provisions may be the same, but those provisions have been separately captured in part 4A for audits and review and part 4B for other assurance engagements. And obviously in the last, there is a glossary which contains all the explanations, the definitions. Now, I think the first part is we must look at what is the legal sanctity for this code. Why should we comply with the code? Should we comply with the code? So if you look at the last bit of the slide, the clause 1, part 2 of the second schedule of our act, it says, a member of the institute, whether in practice or not, shall be deemed to be guilty of a professional misconduct if he contravenes any of the provisions of this act or the regulations made thereunder or any guidelines issued by the council. So the word important here is any guidelines issued by the council. This code, when approved by the council, is issued as a guideline of the council. So it has a backing from clause 1, part 2 of the second schedule, and members both in service as in practice are required to follow this code because this has a legal sanctity to it. I've already explained the difference between the word should to shall. And there are provisions in this code, if anyone can download it and look at it, has a number of provisions which, as we go along, I'll probably highlight some of them, where the word shall has been used and the compliance of those provisions is mandatory. And not doing those can or may expose a member to a professional misconduct. So this code that way, why it should be complied with, gets its sanctity from clause 1, part 2 of the second schedule. Now let's talk about very briefly, what are the 5 fundamental principles? Now these haven't changed. I've been a member of the ICAI for the last about a year and 3-4 months now, effective January 19. We're looking at a lot of changes happening, and are we saying, and we're discussing that, are there any fundamental principles which should be added to what the fundamental principles are? And every time you debate something and you come back with a final solution to say, no, these 5 fundamental principles are fine to deal with and cover everything. So very briefly, what does integrity means? The code says a chartered accountant should be straightforward and honest in all professional and business relationships. Very simply, honest and straightforward in all business relationships. What does objectivity say? It says not to compromise professional or business judgments because of bias, conflict of interest, or undue influence of others. I think each word is important in these definitions. Objectivity, it says not to compromise professional or business judgment. You can't compromise your judgment because of bias. Just because you do not like a person because of bias, will you change your judgment? Or will you change your judgment because of conflict of interest? You should not do a work if there's a conflict of interest or unless you reduce that risk. Or will you change your judgment because of undue influence? So that's objectivity which deals with it. Third principle is professional competence and due care. And it is very important. You see, a client expects you to be professionally competent. And what does the code say again? It says a member should attain and maintain. Look at the words, attain and maintain professional knowledge and skill at the level required to ensure that a client or employing organization receives competent professional service based on current technical and professional standards and relevant legislation. And what is due care? Act diligently and in accordance with the applicable technical and professional standards. So these definitions are all contained in the code, and I'm just kind of explaining the definition very briefly. Each definition is explained with some examples. Confidentiality is again very important to our profession. You see, you come across so much of information. Should you have this fundamental principle or not? And what does confidentiality says? To respect the confidentiality of information acquired as a result of professional and business relationships. You acquire knowledge, you should keep it confidential. And the last, but not the least, is professional behavior. It says to comply with the relevant laws and regulations and avoid any conduct that the professional accountant knows or should know might discredit the profession. Each of the fundamental principles, there is no change from the 2009 code to the 2019 code. They remain the same. And I don't think there is any change required. So these fundamental principles are contained in section 110 of the code. Now, if you look at the conceptual framework, I just put one slide on it, and this slide actually explains how do you apply these fundamental principles, how do you look at the independence and the other conflict of interest, etc. It says you must evaluate when you're doing an assignment, are there any threats to it? And threats meaning, are you doing something where your fundamental principles are at a threat? If they are at a threat, then you must evaluate the threat. You must see whether the threat is such that it creates a difficulty for you in giving your opinion. And if yes, then you apply safeguards. And this code actually contains various chapters, various issues where they have said how to apply safeguards. Now, the safeguard, when you apply, it can either reduce a threat and eliminate a threat, or it is possible that the threat is not reduced. The threat remains as it is. If you're able to reduce the threat or eliminate the threat, then you can accept the assignment and go on with it. So take an example that you're doing an audit. You know that your partner's, relation is the CEO or the CFO of the company, and your partner is in charge of the audit. Should your partner be in charge of that audit? Is there a threat? There is a familiarity threat. There is a familiarity in the client's organization. How do you reduce the threat? You may change the partner, you may change the team. If you can do all those things, you can carry on and accept the assignment. But if you're not, it was not possible for you to reduce those threats, there are circumstances in which this code recommends that you may end up declining the engagement altogether, because it is not that you can carry on with the engagement. You have to end the engagement and say, sorry, I can't do it because there is a threat. Because if you don't do that, tomorrow you may expose yourself to a professional misconduct. So this conceptual framework in the initial stages explains what are the threats, how do you evaluate them, what steps to take to reduce the threats, and how do you document those. And I think one thing I must say in the beginning again, documentation is going to be the key at some point of time, especially when you look at all these provisions and look at the expectation of the stakeholders today. There are a number of cases going on, in India and I mean elsewhere as well, where the regulators are asking a member, what did you do on this issue? How did you resolve this issue? Were there oral discussions? Some members have said, yes, there were oral discussions. I met the CEO, I met the CFO. These issues were discussed and we have accordingly taken a particular decision. What the regulators or those people who are questioning is, they're saying, but show us where have you documented it? So there was a threat. How did you document it? Did you document it? Show us the documentation. Show us the evidence. And I think, as I was talking to Mahesh yesterday, when you're looking at COVID and the issues, you're saying test, test, test. I think here the word document is very important. Evaluate the threat, document whatever you have done, because at a later point of time, the documentation will help you defend your position. Because somewhere these issues may come up at a later stage, that what did you do in a particular circumstance? This slide, basically, I'll just, I've already explained the word R, which is the in between the slide, requirements. All the requirements in this code are designated by the letter R, and it includes the word shall. There's an application material where the word A has been used. So the code is very well structured in a proper way, introducing the subject, giving you what are the requirements, and also detailing the application material for each of the requirements. Now, I think let's deal with one of the important issues on NOCLAR first. Now, this issue has been so hotly debated everywhere that I must explain this in slightly more detail. There are 3-4 slides which captures the issue on NOCLAR. So what is NOCLAR? It actually means non-compliance with laws and regulations. So if you look at the para 260.4 in the code, it says that first of all, there is an expectation which the public has from the members. It says, and it records, that a distinguishing mark of the accountancy profession is its acceptance of the responsibility to act in the public interest. So we stand out and say, look, whatever we do, there is a responsibility which we have to act in the public interest. And it says that when responding to non-compliance or suspected non-compliance, so please note, friends, it is not only the non-compliance which one has to look at, it is the suspected non-compliance also. It says when responding to non-compliance or suspected non-compliance, the objective of the professional accountant are, so there are 3 objectives: to comply with the principles of integrity and professional behavior, that whatever you will do with integrity and professional behavior, you'll alert the management that there is something wrong and please take steps to correct it. And third, to take such further action as appropriate in the public interest. You see, gone are the days when I can say that my audit is under the Companies Act. I will just look at the Companies Act provisions. I will not do anything else. It actually says and puts a responsibility on the members that when during the course of your audit you come across something which is material, can you keep your eyes closed to it and turn a blind eye to say, well, it doesn't bother me. It is not my area because it is not Companies Act which I deal with. My appointment is under Companies Act. So just to give you an example, supposing your client is into, I'm using a very strong word, terrorist financing, or your client is into, say, something which is a public health hazard. For example, look at what happened in Vizag yesterday in India, or look at what happened in Union Carbide almost 25 years back or 30 years back. Now, when you're doing an audit, supposing you come across, say, a show cause from the authorities, some issues going on, that the plant which the company has is not working properly and there are risks like this to the life of people. Now, can you say, look, I'm looking at only Caro, or I'm doing a bank audit and I just look at whatever I'm supposed to report to RBI on NPs, etc., and I will not look at this. The new code requires the members to look at that also. So let me point out 2 things here. One is, you're not supposed to investigate, because when we were discussing it in the council, a lot of questions came up. How will my member know what laws are applicable? Obviously, you will not know. There are hundreds of laws. How will my member know what to look at? Obviously, I mean, take a case of a real estate. I think I was talking to Ashwin in the morning. We had a real estate player in India who was supposed to construct 40 floors and he constructed 80 floors. And the matter was in the Supreme Court. Now, when you don't have the authority to construct more than 40 floors and you construct 80 floors, what is going to happen? Someone may come up and demolish the building tomorrow. What should you do? Should you highlight to the shareholders? Should you highlight somewhere? Should you take up some action or not? So each fact may have a different action pattern actually. So if you look at this code, it says that a member should not keep the eyes closed in case he comes across something which is material during the course of audit. So it is not that he has to investigate. If during the course of audit he doesn't come across anything, fine. If he comes across something, how he has dealt with it, he should record it. Because supposing he comes across an issue and he meets the management, talks to people in governance, and then takes a position that everything is fine, nothing to worry about, he's taken a calculated decision on a particular issue. To say that my members should not do anything, I think was felt by some people, but I think ultimately the council decided, no, I think we should have this provision. And if you look at what it says on non-compliance, so the para 260.5 goes on to say that non-compliance with laws and regulations comprises acts of omission or commission. You may omit to do something or you may commit something, intentional or unintentional, which are contrary to the prevailing laws or regulations committed by the following parties. It can be employing organization, it can be people charged with governance, etc., etc. And actually, it gives only examples of some acts in the code. It can't have an exhaustive list. So it says there can be issues with fraud, corruption, and bribery. I mean, imagine supposing your client had got a contract by bribing the officials in the government. Otherwise, the person was not entitled to it. Now, you come across the evidence during the course of your audit. What should you do? It is possible that the member may not have the answer also. So what is the member supposed to do? This code actually guides you to that also. You may consult someone who's an industry expert. You may consult a lawyer. You may consult a regulator. Supposing the problems are in the financial reporting, who should you report? You can report SEBI actually. So this code actually gives a guidance to a large extent on what a member is supposed to do. And it has far-reaching consequences. Now, keeping all that in mind, when the council decided, it decided that for now, these provisions, especially the provisions of NOCLAR, will have limited application, and it will be applicable only to the listed entities to start with. Because, the council felt that in India, my members are all over the country, small towns, how will they do it? So let's, bring these provisions slowly. Let's have it applicable to the listed entities first. And then it is applicable to only audit assignments of the listed entity. The second, restriction which has been put in the code. And in case of the professional accountant in service in the listed entities, it will be applicable to them also. So the idea was that let's not make this provisions applicable to the entire breadth of 3 lakhs plus members today. Let's start in a slow way. Let's see the experience. And I think here, I have already requested the Ethical Standards Board chairperson, Kamisha, who I work with quite closely, that I think over a period of time, the institute should come out with guidance on these issues as to what my members are supposed to do. Because, all of us will go through all the teething stages of these, new provisions which are coming. So I think there's a responsibility with the institute also to come out with guidance on this provision. NOCLAR as a law is already there. So if you look at the responsibility of a member of material amounts and disclosure in the financial statements, I think there is SA 250 which deals with it. It says, laws and regulations that have a direct effect on the determination of material amounts and disclosure of the financial statements, it is already there. So AASB has a publication, SA 250, which already deals with NOCLAR, but it deals with NOCLAR only for the financial statements. What we are discussing right now is the second bullet, which is other laws and regulations, compliance with which may be fundamental to the entity's business and operations, or to avoid material penalties. So one doesn't have to look at trivial mistakes, small issues. We have to look at something which may have an impact on the going concern, which may have an impact on the environment, which may have an impact on some data protections, issues which are major, which may impact the concern, which may impact the stakeholders at large. So again, I'm repeating, one can't list down all the acts, but the code, as given in this slide, also gives examples of some of the acts, some of the issues. The issues can be with fraud, corruption, bribery, money laundering, terrorist financing, security markets and trading, etc., etc. So I think the idea was to give guidance to members that, look, this is what the expectation of the public is from the members. Should we have it or not? We can always say, look, it's not required. But every time, as the president sir also said, we are the second largest accounting professional body in the world. We are partners in nation building. India can't today say that I'm a country with where people would not be able to stand up to issues to be reported. What is ethics? If your client is doing something wrong, should you report or not? And I think this basically says you report if it is required. If it is not required, don't report. So what is not covered in NOCLAR is matters which are inconsequential, which are trivial, Personal misconduct, which is not related to the business, is not to be reported. And as I said earlier, the professional accountant is required to address NOCLAR only when, and this is very important, when he encounters the same in the course of providing a professional service. He is not supposed to investigate. This is what is critical. And I think if tomorrow it is shown that the member knew about it and kept her eyes closed, then the member will have a problem. So if the client can come back and say, look, here is what was seen by your member, he did not say anything. Member may also run into a problem. Leave here the businessman who may have a problem. I'm not really concerned with his issues right now. But a member, once he sees something, should document it. If it is trivial, ignore it. If it is important, see how he deals with it. And I think all of us know that it is the gross negligence of a member which can be a problem. If he takes a view that in his view, this issue did not require reporting, then he's taking a view. Right or wrong will be proved later. But I think if he's taking a considered view, I would like to presume that my member will do the things the right way. And who's the appropriate authority will depend actually on the facts of the case. So for example, if it is something to do with fraudulent financial reporting, I think SEBI is the right person who will have to deal with the issues. Now, this is broadly on NOCLAR. This provision actually has been talked so much that this code probably, every time someone looks at it, it says, what is NOCLAR? And that is what even presidents are also alluded to it, that NOCLAR is, very important to look at. And I think before I go to the next slide, let me just kind of explain the requirement, the word R which I had used. So the members who want to see it later, please look at clause R260.6. It starts with the word R. There's 3 lines. I'll just read it quickly. It says, when encountering such non-compliance or suspected non-compliance, the accountant shall obtain an understanding of those legal or regulatory provisions, if any, and comply with them, including any requirement to report the matter to an appropriate authority and any prohibition or alerting the relevant party. So this is the requirement. It says, when encountering such non-compliance, the accountant shall obtain. He must obtain. It is mandatory. If he doesn't, then he's not complying with the code. So the word which I was trying to explain, the word shall has been used. I mean, earlier code was using the word the accountant should obtain. Now, should can be may not, and every time those questions were coming, this code has removed the word should. It says the accountant shall do this. It is mandatory. He doesn't have a choice. He may take a view in the end is different, but it is a responsibility which he has to do. And I can again share it with colleagues on the who are listening to this web, that when this issue was debated, the MCA also wanted to come out with their own code. You see, when NFRA was looking at, there was some proposal from their side to come out with their own code. And we retorted back by saying, my members can't have multiple code of conduct also, code of ethics also. You can't have a separate code. Now, a provision like this, they wanted to have at all cost because they are the stakeholders, MCA, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the SFIO, the NFRA. They said, if you will not have, we'll prescribe it. So if somewhere our council had taken a decision not to put this in place, which I don't think so, the council was all for it. The MCA was very clear that these kind of provisions are required because internationally these provisions are there. But yes, these provisions have far-reaching consequences. And my members have to probably be much more sharper on these things in the times to come. And I think Institute also has an equal responsibility of providing guidance wherever required. I can pass the slide. It is independent standards 4A, 4B, we've already spoken about. Now, this is again something which is new to the code, and I think it's important for us to note this. Breach of the code. Now, this provisions in section 400 actually deals with that if there is a breach of the code by the member, with which he is aware about, and obviously he would be aware about and nobody else, what should he do? Should he take steps to correct it? And actually the code prescribes the policy. The code says there is a mechanism of self-correction also. And this is very important. You know, supposing my partner was doing something which is not permitted, and as soon as I come to know, I stop it. I mean, it is a self-correction. Why shouldn't I be allowed to do it? My earlier code was silent on this. This code recognizes the fact that there may be a breach by a member and nobody else will know. You see, supposing in my firm or your firm, if you're doing something and there's a breach, only you will know, nobody else will know, or your partners would know. Can you correct that breach? The answer is yes. So for example, I think the Companies Act also prescribes that if there is a particular shareholding and if any one person holds more than a certain number of shares within a certain time frame, you can correct that shareholding. Otherwise, your appointment will be impacted. So the Companies Act also recognizes this. Here, this is recognized in the code. It says if a firm concludes that a breach of requirement of this part has occurred, it shall take steps and suspend or eliminate the interest. So for example, if there's indebtedness which is not supposed to be there, you can end the indebtedness. Supposing there was some conflict of interest. Supposing my relative was working as a CFO, who I was dealing with as a partner. Should I be doing the audit? There's a conflict. Either I should move out or he should move out of the job. Take steps. You know, self-correction is what is required. And the code actually obviously can't have all the examples, it can only have principles. And it says, consider the applicable legal or regulatory requirements and apply them. And maybe inform the management too. That look, there was a breach, we have corrected it. Those charged with governance, please inform them if you want to. So this code actually is, this feature is again one of the new features in this code, where there is a breach and where the breach can be self-corrected. Key audit partner. How are we on the time? Sorry. Okay.
We have time.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this is one definition I think which is very critical actually, because people who deal and are the auditors or CFOs who deal with auditors, I think every time there are provisions to look at on partner rotation. You know, who's the engagement partner, who's the EQCR, who's the consulting partner. So this code defines who's a key audit partner and says the engagement partner, the individual responsible for engagement quality control review, he can be a key audit partner. And other audit partners, if any, they can also be key audit partners. The engagement team who makes key decisions or judgments, significant matters with respect to the audit of the financial statements, etc. Now, depending upon the circumstances and the role of individuals on the audit, other than the partners might include, for example, audit partners responsible for significant subsidiaries or divisions. I think the critical part here was, if you look at the next slide, if you look at this, and I'll come back to the firm rotation, I'll just go back. My 2009 code had a 7-year time on for an engagement partner. Time on meaning I can be on the assignment for a 7-year period. And after that, there's a cooling off for 2 years. This is the only thing in 2009 code. The 2009 code doesn't deal with the engagement partner. It doesn't deal with if I'm an engagement quality control review partner. Because in many organizations today, you will have a separate partner depending on the size of the client and the intricacies and the complexities. You may have a partner called engagement quality control review. Majority of the law firms, majority of the large firms has it. Large meaning not the big four, but large firms. And there are key audit partners who may be otherwise there, you know, who may be doing a big part of the audit along with the engagement partner, but they may not be the engagement partner. So under the 2009 code, we had only one statement, 7-year time on and 2 years cooling off. But looking at these three different set of partners, the revised code in 2019 says the time on doesn't get changed. That remains as 7 years. But the cooling off for an engagement partner is 5 years. So after working for 7 years on a client, he must walk away for 5 years. But he was only an engagement quality control partner. He was not an engagement partner with that higher responsibility. Then the cooling off is only 3 years. And if he was an otherwise key audit partner, then the cooling off is only 2 years. You can't have multiple engagement partners. You'll have only one engagement partner. So it can't be that there are 3 engagement partners and the cooling off will be 5 years for all 3 of them. So the firm will designate who's the EP, who's the EQCR, and who's the key audit partners. And that is why these definitions and this differentiation was required. So if I go back to this slide, the key audit partner definition is in the glossary of the 2019 code. It was not there in the 2009 code. It very explains who is the key audit partner. And again, I mean, all these are substantive changes, which I'm discussing. There's a section on firm rotation also. Please note, ISBA doesn't have a firm rotation. And the 2009 code did not have a firm rotation because it came only in the 2013 Act. So there could not be a chapter on firm rotation in the 2009 code. But in the 2019 code, we have put all the provisions in one place. So the firm rotation as per Companies Act 2013, there are different regulators who have different kind of rotation requirements. RBI says you can be an auditor for 3 years and then the cooling off is 3 years. There's something on housing companies which is different. So whatever one could lay hands on, we have put in a separate section 550, those provisions on firm rotation. And we have also recognized the fact that in the Companies Act, it says that the shareholders of the company will decide what the partner rotation should be. And if that is of a lesser period, then the firm has to follow that. So picked up something from ISBA which was required, but looked at Companies Act 2013, because when I look at audits in the corporates, I have to follow Companies Act 2013 in all its places. But yes, under the revised code, partner rotation will coexist along with the audit firm rotation. And I'm not going into the cases here. The code clearly explains that what happens if you are a EQCR for 3 years and then you become an engagement partner. What if initially you were only a key audit partner and then becomes an engagement partner? What you were an engagement partner for 3 years, can you be an EQCR for X number of years or not? So there are different, set of examples which the code contains where you may change positions. You may be a EQCR in 1 year and may become an engagement partner in year 2 and 3. So how much duration will you have? And I think the code also deals with it that for some reasons, if you're not able to make the change when the change had to take place. So supposing as an engagement partner, you have done a 7-year time on and you're not supposed to start with the cooling off. And supposing in an example, Anish was the engagement partner, say for 7 years. And in the 8th year, I was supposed to become an engagement partner. For some reasons, for some difficulty, some conflict, there is a problem that I can't be an engagement partner in the year 8 when Anish has to sign off. You can go back and this code permits you to have that extra year, but only once. It gives you that leeway that if for some reasons you cannot comply with this, yes, you can have an exemption for 1 year, but you must, take steps, make those notings as to why you're doing it. In certain circumstances, it explains that exemption of 1 year is there. So the code even takes care of that also. Partner rotation, as I said, has been brought in. There is a new provision in the 2019 code. I've already touched upon in case of companies where members of the company prescribe a shorter time on period. Such shorter time on period shall prevail. RBI and NBFCs have covered all this here. Going forward, again, this code clearly explains the restrictions which will be there on you during the cooling off. I mean, it is not that you are under a cooling off, but you are again consulting with the engagement team on the technical and the industry specific issues, transactions and events. So there's a whole list of, list given. Once it is a cooling off, it is a cooling off. You can't be a relationship partner. You can't be meeting the CEOs to maintain the relationship with the firm. It says there's a prohibition on leading or coordinating the professional services provided by the firm to the audit client or overseeing the relationship of the firm with the audit client. I mean, I was the engagement partner for 7 years. I go under cooling off and Anish takes over. But I still lead the activity, coordinate the professional services, meet the audit client, oversees the relationship. Then where is the cooling off? The cooling off should be that I'm out. Yes, it also gives you a permission that supposing Anish wants to discuss something with me as to what happened in the previous year, should I not tell him that? No, please tell him that. So the cooling off has to be in all substance, not only in form. So the code clearly explains there's a prohibition on undertaking any other role or activity that would result in the individual having significant or frequent interaction with senior management or those charged with governance, or exerting direct influence on the outcome of the audit engagement. I mean, if you look at the first point, it is so wide. Having significant or frequent interaction with the senior management or those charged with governance, because what will I do in the 7 years of audit? I would have made relationships with the CEO, with the management. And if I'm still doing frequent interaction, then where is the cooling off? So this code actually lists down the activities which you will not do. And I mean, how will someone come to know? Only in case of a complaint that there's a professional misconduct. So someone who's complaining will say that Sanjeev did 1, 2, 3, 4, which kind of contravenes this thing. And there's a cooling off. Why is he doing it? So the code actually explains what is cooling off, what should be done and what should not be done. And that is where I think reading of the code is very critical. I think as all of us know, all of us said, certain things are basics, fundamental, the value system. Ethics is nothing but value system. But there are certain provisions which one has to read on the do's and don'ts. And ethically, one would say that I should not be doing it. But at times, the circumstances may push you to do it. And that is where the challenge will come when you say, sorry, boss, I can't do this because my code doesn't permit me to do it. So this code, that way may sound harsh. But I think if you have to stand tall and if the profession has to have the due respect, which, it has to have, then I think these are the requirements which one has to look at. Management responsibility. There is no mention of this in 2009. And I think a lot of people confuse the word management responsibility with management services. These two things are absolutely separate and different. Management responsibility is when you do something to control the organization, lead the organization, do the activities, a management responsibility. So this code clearly says that the firm shall not assume a management responsibility for an audit client. I mean, even if I don't say it, I think it has to be understood that I can't have the management responsibility and do the audit as well. And then I'm doing a management function, I'm doing a self-review, who I'm talking to, conflict of interest, can't do it. But having said that, can you provide advice and recommendations to assist the management of an audit client in discharging this responsibility? The answer is yes, as long as you're not assuming a management responsibility. And that is where actually, if you look at the code, I think this code requires you to look at, when you're advising a client, is the client taking decisions? I've seen clients coming back and saying, well, Anish is the only person I know. He's my chartered accountant. He's my auditor. He gives me advice. I just follow it. I don't have anyone to take decisions in my office. Now, if the client doesn't have anyone to take decisions in his office, is Anish doing a management responsibility also or not? Please ask yourself. You are doing it. Should you be the auditor then? So the question is, you have to draw the line yourself. I've seen clients saying, Well, I don't understand the structures at all. This is what my consultant have said. So if the consultant is a tax consultant and not an auditor, then it is fine. But if the consultant and the auditor is the same person who's giving the tax structuring advice also, creating complex structures which the client doesn't understand, and there is no one in the client's office to understand and take a decision, then what will the document show tomorrow? The document will show that you gave the advice, you did the management function, though your advice may say, this is recommended for you to take a decision. But the client says, sorry, sir, I have no one in my office to take a decision for me. It is what my chartered accountant tells me. And unfortunately, at times in a small firm, and I must say with respect, I have the highest respect for a firm, small or big, it is just the size. It is just, someone wants to work as an entrepreneur and doesn't want to join a larger firm. Doesn't mean that he or she is not doing a good job. He may be doing a better job than someone else. But if you are a one-man show and you're taking all the decisions for the client, can you tomorrow get up and say that I am not doing a management responsibility? I think the answer will be very difficult to say that you are not doing it, is what I would like to say. And I would leave that point here itself. So this code again looks at one more service which I can provide to a client, administrative services to an audit client. And I can share it with you. We in the ISBA in December were discussing, is there any word processing service which is mechanical? Today, a word processing service, when you advise a client on data management, it is all technical. I mean, it is so much technical that we have, a gentleman on our ISBA board who's in a bank board in UK. He says, I think we should revisit word processing services. Should this be allowed or not? Because tomorrow, let me share it with you. On the ISBA board, we have an observer from PIOB, which is the Public Interest Oversight Board. There's an observer who sits in our meetings throughout the length of the meeting. And the responsibility of that person is to report back to PIOB whether the meetings of ISBA of the board are held properly or not, whether the issues are debated properly or not. There is a person sitting and attending the meeting for the 3-day, right from 8:30 in the morning till 6 in the evening. And in the end, they have to go back and tell their board, they're not allowed to vote because they're not a board member as such, they're observers. That is the seriousness with which these issues are discussed in these meetings. And their job is to look at public interest, which is paramount. So they are saying word processing service. What is word processing? It is not a management service. Should your member be doing it? But yes, preparing administrative statutory forms, submitting such forms, etc., maybe administrative. So I think as we go along, these things will keep on evolving. And our new code, I'm sure we'll have more questions as we go along. But having said that, the code is there for us to follow. So look at non-assurance services. Our 2009 code has a number of list of services which are permitted, which are certain services not permitted. Can a statutory auditor be internal auditor? Can he provide accounting services? Can he provide IT system services where he's going to review them? The answer is no. These services are not prohibited. These are not allowed to be provided to an audit client. The code also explains, can you provide recruiting services when you recruit an employee for a client? And actually it explains in certain ways what you can do and what you can't do. So it gives you an enhanced definition of what is recruiting services. So can you prepare a job description? The answer may be yes. But can you interview a client, interview these prospective candidates, and then recommend one name to the client? Basically, you are recommending and interviewing a person for the client. That is not recruiting service. There will be a conflict because tomorrow you recommend as a CFO becomes the CFO of a company. He will be somewhere indebted to you. Perception will be he will be. And then this code kind of captures all those things. As we speak, and I'm sure all of you would be aware, on non-assurance services, there's an exposure draft from the ISBA already in the domain of ISBA. It has been given to the people, the countries to report, respond, give comments. The feeling in ICAI is that these services should be as less as possible so that there is least amount of conflict of interest. Their view is, why should you go into those areas which exposes you to a conflict? Public interest is paramount. Stop that service, is what their thought process is broadly changing to. And in the times to come, those, I think, one is moving in that direction, that there will be some firms which will become only audit firms, and they'll be providing non-audit services to maybe their non-audit clients. There'll be firms having both, but somewhere the restrictions on the audit services, restrictions on a client who's your client as an audit will be more. Today, even MCA is looking at it. Our institute has responded. So this matter is also under consideration between the MCA and the institute. And I think institute has provided a list of services which can be provided. If you look at the Companies Act, it already has a list of services which can't be provided. And it says the last clause, any other service as may be recommended. So the institute has given its recommendations. I have some idea of it. I'm not going into those details because that is before the MCA and the institute and the MCA are discussing. And I think sooner than later, they'll come out with what services one can provide to an audit client, hopefully very soon. So this is something, one area which I think is again under the consideration of the MCA and the institute both.
CA Sanjeev ji,
Sure.
we have a relevant question here, and I would like, with your permission, I would request CA Sai Devta to ask that question at this juncture because it's related to the previous slide which you just mentioned.
Please.
Namaskar, sir. Thanks for the very delightful session we are having. I think definitely this requires a long session, not just 2 hours or 1.5 hours. But just sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
Just for the sake of members, they are very curious to know some of the practical questions in terms of the people from Dubai, especially they're asking some questions. I'll just read out for you. As you are aware that there are accountants or non-accountants owning the audit firms de facto in UAE as well, who does not bother for any sort of compliance at all. And there is a stiff competition in this market. Till 1st January 2018, VAT law got implemented in UAE, and auditors, consultants having various nationalities started getting assignments for VAT apart from audit. They are not bothered or governed by any code of conduct and taking both assignments, audit plus VAT. In this case, if Indian CS follow this ICAI code of conduct, apart from relevant country code of conduct, they might be left behind in this competition and won't survive in this country. So what do you suggest for foreign audit firms based in UAE or any other country in order to overcome this difficulty? Over to you, sir.
So I think, you see, my code of conduct is applicable to my members, right? And I think there is nothing in this code which is difficult to follow actually. Now, until unless there are members who are doing things, in fact, to put the things in a slightly different perspective, I think the clients should be looking at people who are governed by a code than by those who are not governed by a code actually, because then there is actually there's a guarantee so-called of a service which is being provided from a person who follows certain code. Now, I remember my father used to say something to me, and this is just one line he reminded me, that there is no right way of doing a wrong thing. Now, either my member wants to do something which is incorrect, then there's no right way of doing it. But if it is the right way of doing it, I think each client would accept it, that that is the right way of doing it. I can give you an example. In India, we have always felt that if I do something for, say, X amount of money, someone else will come in and say, undercut me and say, I'll do it at 75% and 50%. Now, what should you do? Should you leave that job or should you do that job at 50%? And there's no answer to it. There is no correct answer to it. Some people believe that you should have the courage to say no. Some people believe there are 100 people who take up that job if you say no. What should be the answer? There's no answer. Now on this, my feeling is that I think we should look at what is the issue actually which is bothering my member. And if there's a solution, then we should find a solution for the member within the code. And if actually I'll go a step forward to say if there's something which is in the code bothers them because of which there is a problem, we should look at what is that which is bothering them and how to correct that also within the four corners of law. I mean, I would like to go in that direction instead of, so as talking to Ashwini in the afternoon, our internal audit standard board, we had no standards to follow earlier. My internal auditor, my member said, if you have standards to follow, tomorrow we'll not follow a standard, you'll have a disciplinary case against me. But, ACCA from London or an MBA, etc., he doesn't have to follow any standards. He doesn't have a problem. I have problems. You fix standards for me and have to follow them. For me, the answer was that we should go to MCA and say, look, our institute and our members follow these standards. Please tell companies to appoint these people as internal auditors and not anyone and everyone who doesn't have any standards to follow. Because if they don't, then we as a regulator at least are looking at them. They'll make sure that your work is done the right way. So I think just to answer your question, I don't know what the problem is, so I can't give you a solution. But if someone can write to me or write to the esb@icai.in or to the president of the institute, I'm open to, I always believe, I'm not saying this code is 100% correct. I would like to believe so. But as you go along, there are challenges, there are issues which come up. We keep on revising it, we keep on correcting ourselves. If the Constitution of India can be amended, this code can also be amended.
Sir, if I can just add, I think the question here is because the value-added tax was introduced in UAE in 2018. And a lot of audit firms pitched in for that work, like for impact assessment or analyzing what can be impact in the tax. And maybe I think only the filing of return was a separate, which the auditor was not doing. So this way they probably have done some kind of Chinese wall to ensure that they don't interfere in the tax advisory.
Okay.
But since the Indian members are also have to follow this code, can there be a definition of like what can be treated as tax advisory and what is not as tax advisory? I think that in that form.
So I think one can look at that, and I think as you go along, there are certain restrictions which have been imposed, but there are safeguards to also correct that. So if in such a situation that you have a problem on, so I remember a firm in India had also opened up an office in UAE to do the GST work, because I think last couple of years the opportunity was so much that a lot of Indian CAs went there to do this work. And happy to find a solution. I mean, and I think every problem has a solution, but the problem is at times we are looking at more problems from the solution and not the solution itself.
True. So I think we can write to someone, if you can advise us, we can write a formal query on this.
So Nishi, write to esb@ica.in. That's the Ethical Standards Board. You can copy me, please, if you want me to kind of follow it up.
Sure.
I will certainly, I'm still on the Ethical Standards Board. I will ensure that whatever queries or whatever issues one has to look at, they should be looked at with a very open mind. And I think I can say it on behalf of Atulji also. I think I will at least push from my side for the issues to be examined at the earliest and responded.
Sure. Sai, you can take next question.
Yeah. I think, Sanjeevji, in the sake of time, maybe if you can scan some of the important slides, maybe another 5-10 minutes.
Okay,
and then
I'll do that.
Finally, we can take some of the questions and then we can have a closing remarks.
Yeah, perfect. So I think, this slides, as I said, there were about 70-80 slides. Obviously, 2 hours would not have been sufficient. Yes. But I just touch upon a few important ones. There's something on taxation services. Okay, safeguards. Actually, this code also talks about safeguards. Every time you have a threat, if it is trivial, if it is insignificant, please ignore it. But if it is to be looked at, you can carry out the work to first bring it at an acceptable level. And it explains what steps you should take. I think once you read the code, it is so beautifully written by the ISBA people that for us in India, the job is very simple. Look at the code, look at the English, make minimum changes and bring it in. I'll just quickly. So one thing more we changed was close and immediate family. You see, in the Companies Act, I don't have a choice. Companies Act defines the definition of a relative in section 277. And the definition is so huge, so wide. I mean, imagine the Companies Act says that if I'm the partner who's doing an audit, I should know what is the holding of my son-in-law in that company. What is the holding of my sister's husband in that company? You know, I was in a firm where I went back to the team and said, look, boss, I can't ask my son-in-law to tell me what shares is he holding. My sister is married. I have never filed the tax return of my brother-in-law because these issues are confidential. I can't ask him which company is he holding shares. And how do you expect me to ask him because my firm is the auditor and I must know? The definition is so wide. So what we did was in this code, we kept that definition as it is because I can't change it, though we have requested the institute to take it up with NCA. But for non-corporates, we said, look at what is close family and what is immediate family. Don't look at relative. An immediate family is spouse or equivalent or a dependent. And a close family is a parent, child, or sibling who is not immediate. So we've kept the definition very narrow when you're looking at the conflicts. Because otherwise, in every case, you'll have a conflict. I mean, my brother-in-law might be holding 100 shares of Reliance, you know, beyond a certain value. I can't do the audit of Reliance, that means. It was like Justice Kapadia, who, you know, who's no more now, in the Supreme Court. You know, he was listening a matter of Reliance and he said to the two lawyers, he says, I hold about 1,000 shares in Reliance. Do you think I should hear the case and pass a verdict? Because tomorrow you'll say I was holding 1,000 shares and I did not disclose and I have given a judgment because I hold shares in Reliance in their favor. So, you know, those things do come up, but that is where the definition of family is very important. Public interest entity. And let me just point out two things here. There is a different expectation from the auditor when it is a public interest entity. The expectation is much more. The reason being because there are public funds involved. As we speak, ISBA has created a group of 3 or 4 board members to define this word again. They're taking inputs from various countries. Even I have given my inputs as to what should be a public interest entity according to us. In ISBA, what happens is first a small group of board members will look at it, then come back to the board with their recommendations, and the board will debate. It'll go back and forth, and then finally come out with the final definition. So this is, as you speak, is a work in progress at ISBA also to define what should be a public interest entity. There is a huge change on inducement, gifts, and hospitality. A lot of changes have happened here. I'm not going into those details here, but yes, there should be a reasonable and informed third-party test when you're taking a gift or giving a gift. Timing of the gift, who's giving you a gift, what is involved, what is not involved. Huge changes have been done here. I say documentation is going to be the key. A lot of places, you'll have to have the documentation. I think Atulji made a point on this. I think I'll just touch upon this slide a little bit. My earlier code said, the 2009 code, which is the current code, that there is a self-regulatory advisory from the institute to say that your fee should not be more than 40% from a client for who you do the audit, that you're so much dependent on the client. The fee should not be more than 40% of your total fees. And this would not cover your fees from your CAG audits, your bank audits, your audits which are given to you by the government, state government, etc., because that is where the appointing authority is not known to you. There is a change in this, and the change is the new provision in the code says that where for 2 consecutive years, your total gross annual professional fee from the audit client and its rated entities represent more than 15% of the total fees, minus that fees from the bank audits, etc., etc. Then you must tell with and communicate with those charged with governance that your fee as an entity from that client is more than 15%. It is not saying that you should leave that work. I think it does recommend that you should either increase the work in such a way that this figure is taken care of. But the point here is that it is again something that people who are appointing you should also know that you are dependent on them. When someone said, well, because of this, they might say, okay, then don't do my work. The point is, such kind of provisions are required to have independence and the word integrity, which is the key to a profession. I think one point which I'll point out, till date, when you are appointed as an auditor, there was a responsibility on you to communicate. There was no responsibility on the earlier audit to respond. And you were supposed to give evidence, etc. But if you look at this code, and if you look at clause R320.6, which is mentioned here in the third bullet, it says very clearly that the earlier accountant who was the auditor earlier, even he has a responsibility now to communicate. And it is again with the word R that he shall. So it says just 3 lines, 320.7, not 320.6, it is 320.7, the last bullet. When an existing or a predecessor accountant is asked to respond to a communication from a proposed accountant, the existing or predecessor accountant shall, please note the word shall again, comply with relevant laws and regulations governing the request and provide any information honestly and unambiguously. Now the code requires an earlier auditor to respond. You see, what is happening is, you say, I have communicated, he has not responded. What do I do? And this code also says, which is the third bullet, which is again an R, that if you are unable to communicate with your predecessor, the proposed accountant shall, again, shall take other reasonable steps to obtain information about any possible threats. So you can't sit on your hands to say, well, I've written to the previous auditor, I will not do anything. Take some other steps. Do some Google search. Find out what the client is. Do something more. Now, what more, again, probably should come as a guidance from the institute as to what more should be done. But I think the expectation is that when you take on a client, you do your KYC, right? Which is, in any case, is there from the 1st January 2017. But this code expects you to do more than that. And also imposes a responsibility on the earlier auditor. I think I can go on. Okay, one point on contingent fees I can add. Our impression is that the contingent fees is not allowed, especially when you're working for an audit client. So there is regulation 192, which kind of gives you a list where a contingent fee is allowed. When you're a liquidator of a company. Now, 2 other areas have been added here. And the second area is very important. First is, if you're an insolvency professional, you may get a fee based as a percentage of the proceeds of the assets being sold or being realized. The last issue we debated a lot in the council, that can I have a fee from a non-audit client for non-assurance service? And should there be a bar on it? Please note, it is a non-audit client for a non-assurance service. And after a lot of debate, the council agreed that there's no issue in this. I mean, if others can do it, why should I restrict my member from doing it? So there is litigation going on. Supposing someone has a demand of 100 crores, and he tells the accountant, who's not his auditor, that look, I'll pay you only 1 lakh or 10 lakhs if you do my fees. But if you win the case, I'll give you 1 crore, X amount. Should this be allowed or not? The council in its wisdom decided that it should be permitted. So it is a fee for rendering non-assurance services to non-audit clients. Let me just quickly turn. I mean, there are a lot of substantive changes. Volume 2, I think just 2 changes I can talk about. There are a number of changes on the advertisement. What can I advertise? What can I not advertise? Can I use my card differently? How should I illuminate my board? Can I do sponsoring? Number of changes. I think probably we can discuss them at some later point of time, but I think a lot of things have been opened up. So can I do a sponsorship? The answer is, as a member or as a firm, I can do a sponsorship, but only of those activities which are being done by POUs, like chapters like you, and where that activity is approved by the CPE of the institute. Can I write books and can I write CA Sanjeev Chaudhary? Yes, I can write. On the write-ups, going to the internet. So a lot of changes have happened, in this code. This is one change which I don't understand, that if I'm a member of another institute, can I write that degree or not? So if I'm a member and I do a CPA from the US, can I write that? The answer is no. If I'm a CPA from Australia, can I write that? The answer is yes, because I have an MRA with them. I mean, it sounds, ridiculous. And I would like to debate this again in the board, but that's the answer. The degree has to be recognized, that degree of that accounting institute has to be recognized by the council of the institute. And my council believes that only in those cases that accounting institutes where I have the MRAs and the MOUs, that I will allow that. With the US I don't have, I will not allow it. So
can't we write first CA and then that degree?
I mean, you can write degrees. You're not practicing that profession. I mean, to ask me, it should be allowed.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of guidance on tenders. CPA is one, CPA Australia is fine, but CPA US is not fine. So it's a revised code says, mentioning qualifications of accounting institutes which have MRA and MOU with the ICAI permitted. So one has to read lines very carefully, I mean, a lot of changes, advertisement, it says in a movie, if there are credits given, existing code is silent. But the revised code says members of the firm's name should be allowed in the TV and the movie credits, provided it is not mentioned differently from other persons. So my name suddenly can't come with a bang saying Sanjeev Chaudhary Chartered Accountant. Whereas, the producers and directors' name are coming in a very small way. As long as all of them are coming the same way, then it is fine. Sharing firm details in an interview, you can share those details. But on a specific question and only factual, you can't be saying, oh, well, I did a great job and I'm so-and-so expert, etc., etc. Again, trying to keep a balance which is required at some places. So some very interesting changes in the code. Some I personally... Sorry?
We can have this presentation for our
members?
Please.
Yeah. So I share this with you and you can share it with the people who have attended at least, whichever way you want to. Internet, for example, has been added to a lot of places now. Now, this is network and logos. Again, I have a huge issue. Network guidelines are of 2011. International networks are not allowed, even today. Logo you can't use except the word CA with that same ink and green and blue. You can't twist it, you can't turn it, etc., etc. Modes of so there are a lot of things, with a lot of changes. So I'll probably stop here. Looking at the time, 10 minutes to go. I think from 7:30. But happy to take it up at some other point of time in more detail on some clauses if required.
We can have some quick questions.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I think the last point in terms of the changing the auditor, there was a question from CA Kapil Batra from Bahrain chapter about the changing auditor. Is it possible for the ICAI to influence the government to make it a law that a client cannot remove the existing auditor simply? And entire basis of changing the auditor is to be presented to the shareholders instead of a simple final recommendation, and the removed auditor should have the right to be heard at the AGM. Can you speak at the AGM? Okay, why he has been removed?
So I think the present law, if I understand correctly, is, and probably someone can correct me, today if you're appointed as an auditor, you're appointed for a period of 5 years and you can't be removed. Though appointment is done each year, but you can't be removed. You can resign, but you can't be removed. And if you resign, you must give reasons as to why you're resigning. So I think to that extent, those provisions have changed. And a 5 year is good enough term, because I think what was happening was that I want to give a bad report and they'll change me and bring, say, Anish in the next year. So those things have gone. And after 10 years, there is a rotation.
Okay.
So I think partially this has been taken care of. I'm not sure as to whether a member can not attend the AGM. I think a member can attend the AGM and can speak. I don't think there's any bar there.
Is he given? Can he be given a right to speak? Why has been removed?
I think he's given the right to attend, and I'm sure if he's a right to attend, he has a right to speak.
Okay.
Sanjeev sir, it is not about the member; it's about the auditor. So
yeah, I'm talking about member as the auditor only. Sorry, when I said member, meaning the auditor. So the auditor has issued a notice, Mahesh, of all the AGMs because his appointment is from one AGM to the next AGM.
Yes.
I mean, I have attended some AGMs as an auditor, so I know I have a right to speak.
And we'll take one more question, sir, on the NOCLAR. Is there any guidelines on type of documentation required from the practicing CA? What about the requirements or expectations from CA practicing abroad, especially in terms of reporting, since they have been already under local requirements?
Yeah, so I think the broad answer is this code is applicable to the members anywhere and everywhere. It is not, bound by the restrictions of the borders. Number one. Number two, you're following the local laws. Here, what we are saying is only that you're supposed to not look at only the financial information and the financial impact or the accounting standards and the auditing standards. I think you're supposed to look at beyond that on material issues which have an impact on the, say, the going concern. And there, the guidance is, it will depend on each facts of the case, what is the issue and what should be done. Because the issue was debated at great length, as I said in the beginning in the council also, that should we revise the curriculum? The answer is no. I mean, in India, we have about 4,000 acts after, about 2,000, which has been repealed by this government. How can you have a list of acts and what can be the violations? And that is where I think what I believe is that the institute should have a department or a set of people. First, it is possible that for large entities, I think as an auditor, what the auditor can ask for is get a legal due diligence done from some lawyers. That is the company following all the laws? Are there any disputes going on? Please list out the disputes. So in a way, that document will show what are the disputes and the show causes as on date. Now that document actually will give you a hindsight, a kind of an information that, well, these are the 10 disputes, which is with the company today. If the company doesn't tell you that there is a dispute, then you are in any case not doing an investigation. I think there should be one document if all of us start asking our clients to do it, maybe on an yearly basis or once in 2 years because the cost may be high, and update that every year by the management itself. So supposing I've done something in year 1, in year 2 the company can say, well, there is no change and there is no other show cause which has come besides the 10 which is already reported to you.
That's good, sir.
So in a way, what you've taken is, you've taken due care to say that the issues of NOCLAR have been looked at by you. You asked the company, what are the issues facing you? The company said 10 issues. Yeah, Mahesh.
Sanjeev sir, sorry to interrupt.
Please.
The number of members who are in service and the number of members who are practicing, there's a big disparity. And those who are in practice, of course, especially in Big Fours, have a code of their own internal code that need to follow. And of course, they would be attending, regular events on updates. But those who are in service, I mean, they are completely disconnected with all this code of ethics things. And once they are passing out, they are getting into the industry and they start working. And to be fair and honest, I think the last time I would have known the code is when I took the exams, to be honest and frank. But of course, that doesn't mean that ignorance can be a bliss. We still have our moral ethics, which we follow. But what is the institute been doing during your term also in terms of, making the members in service, conversant with the codes and ensuring that, they don't take it, that this is not something that they need to be aware of. Again, touching upon the point which the President sir also mentioned, members in service are equally bound by these ethics, this code of ethics. So what has been done on that?
So, Mahesh, nothing much, to be very honest. I'll probably take that responsibility also of, not able to change those things which are required. It's a collective council which ultimately is responsible. I was a part of the council for 6 years. I think where we are missing out is that we are missing out in connecting with our members regularly. You see, for example, when you pay your membership, can I not ask you a question that, have you read the code at least? Are you aware about these 20 changes? Can I not put them in the journal regularly and keep making them aware? Can I not put them in a separate email? I have the email addresses of all my members. Can I not, I think it is the fault lies on both the sides.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what happens is that the institute is asked these questions as to what have you done. I'm sorry, I equally, ask this question to myself at times, what have I done? And that's where, at times I find no answers actually.
And actually, just a quick one, yeah, Sanjeev ji, this very good point you raise, that when you're paying a membership fee and then, we are asked to just acknowledge that, yes, we are aware, we have read the code of ethics. This is what we do in our own company every year. We are asked to give an acknowledgement, where through our, like we have GAN solutions, that, every now and then we keep on getting these type of, this type of surveys conducted, so we have to acknowledge that. So I think it's a good point actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in the undertaking which you give, maybe the intimation which goes to you that your membership fee is due, I think that letter may contain 5 points on the code to say, well, these are the 5 changes in the code. I hope you're aware about it.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, one can do a lot. Technology is so can do so much. People like me who are IT deficient have a problem. So yesterday I had to request Mahesh and Anish to, do a trial run. But I think technology can help us a lot.
Nowadays.
But technology can really help us a lot. I mean, you see books which are behind me. These are, shows that I'm old-fashioned still. I still like to read a hard book at times, Old school.
Mahesh thought it's a virtual background, so.
No, my daughter taught me how to use the Zoom, sir. She told me how to change the virtual background. So that is the generation gap.
We have to learn from our kids only. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I use my mobile phone as mobile phone. My daughter says, this is not a phone. This can do 100 other things.
Yes. Sir, since Atulji is kind enough to be staying with us, I will ask Neeraj to ask one question which is for him.
Yeah.
Neeraj.
Atulji, there is one question from one member that he is 59-year-old and he says that if I pay a membership fee for 10 years, will the senior membership discount will apply?
So he will be, right now he's not a senior member. He will become the senior member in 10 years down the line.
No, after 1 year.
He's 59 years old now.
No. Whatever is fees applicable today, that has to be multiplied with 10. So in case he is becoming a FCA, then he has to pay the extra fees. But in case the regular fees, in case there is any inflation, then there will not be any extra amount which will be claimed by the ICAI. So no discount in between, no inflation in between.
Yeah.
So maybe he can pay for 1 year and then next year he can pay for 10 years.
Yes, that he can do.
That's just...
And just to share with you what the Sanjeev Bhai, elder brother Sanjeev ji was talking about, that the ICAI, Sanjeev ji has done a lot of, I will say, the thought-provoking and like a brainstorming exercise during this 6-year tenure. And we always respect and appreciate the contribution given by Sanjeev ji. So it is not the case that Sanjeev ji will say that what I did and I have the answer is no. The answer is yes only. And even I can tell you that foundation, somebody has to create the foundation, and Sanjeev ji played that role to create the foundation. And even just to share with you, because I not shared those points which are related to exclusively like a regulatory side, but last council meeting we approved to establish a center for audit quality in the Jaipur. We have a 25-acre campus over there. And this month only we are launching that center for audit quality, and all the initiatives we are talking about the quality of the like to how to train our members about the code of ethics, this and that. So all these exclusive initiatives will be taken care by that center for audit quality, including that includes the nominee. We will be calling the nominees from the SEBI, MCA, RBI, CAG, everything. So we are like working shoulder to shoulder to see that our members are ultimately what is, as I mentioned you on the earlier occasion, what is ICAI? ICAI is the sum total of the all the activities being performed by the its member, its stakeholders, whether it is a member or a student.
Okay. Thank you, President sir. I think now it's time for me to give the closing remarks. Definitely, it's a very eye-awakening section for all the members and the panelists and everyone who is attending the session across the world. As ICAIans, we are definitely the partners in the national building. I think you touched upon so many times about the integrity and the loyalty. That is the foremost thing for the chartered accountants. And you well better compared about the 2009 Code of Ethics and 2019 Code of Ethics. That has again a really unparalleled discussion has happened on this 2019 Code of Ethics. And we also stressed upon how documentation is very important. And at the end of the day, evidence is the priority. Without evidence, we cannot be challenged or we cannot be questioned. And also you touched upon the NOCLAR provisions and how the guidance to members, what is the guidance to members, what they're expecting from you. This is very important to realize that members should be well aware and cautious about what they're doing. And any wrongdoings or any misconduct, as I see image is very much at risk, what Mr. President sir has told. At the end of the day, what you or me or anyone is doing across the world, I see image is at risk. And the difference between the should and shall, today the shall is very important rather than the should, which is in the earlier provisions. So the shall plays a very key role. And also there are so many stakeholders who are looking at us like MOC, MCA, NAFRA, RBI, who actually they feel that we are the checkers in terms of the accounts of the companies or anyone. And in terms of the breach, if you find any breach and if you want to self-correct, this is the opportunity, you can correct anytime. And this is the good provisions in the 2019. And also you touched upon the changes in the partner rotation, comparing the 2009 and 2019 code. Also you touched upon the key audit partner in terms of what is the definition. It's well defined and well clarified in 2019 code. Also on the firm rotation, what is the relevance under companies law under section 550. And also the non-assurance services, and I think it's the list goes on. Definitely, it's a brainstorming section for everyone. I think it's like after me sitting for this, we can feel that we are writing another chartered accountant examination, reading this code of ethics. So I suggest that now it's time for me to give a certificate of appreciation, since this is a customary for all our to appreciate the speaker with a certificate of appreciation. Since we cannot as virtually, I think Mr. Mahesh, CA Mahesh will be showing the certificate of appreciation to you as a matter of respect. Please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, President sir, for staying 2 hours.
Sir, I only wish to update. There was a question whether the COP, the members having the COP can pay the 10 years fees. So I just wish to update all the viewers that whether you have the COP or not, for the initially 3-4 days, there was a problem while accepting the COP fees for 10 years. Now that is made functional on that 3rd or 4th April only. And members can very well pay the 10 years fees even if you have the COP with you. So,
by the way, I paid for 10 years.
Sir, there is one more question. There's one more question saying that if someone pay a fee for 10 years and in future the status changes to FCA,
then they have to pay the differential amount.
Differential amount.
You have changed your status. Somebody will today not having the COP. Tomorrow, if they will take the COP and they will say thank you very much.
So during that,
I will continue with that. So that is not possible. You are changing your status, meaning thereby, it's a fresh case then.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
And I thank you once again to all the chairpersons and chairmen of the different chapters across the world, and CA Mahesh especially for taking the lead in organizing this session. And I give the control to CA Mahesh and CM Mustaq Merchant in giving the valedictory address. Thank you.
Yeah, Mahesh, you're starting or shall I?
No, sir. I always let the senior, especially from Saudi, to start.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Well, all I can say, that's a very, very informative session from our experts, Mr. C.S. Sanjeev Chowdhury. I think, well, I really hope and pray that nobody tests positive for this COVID-19. But one of the positives that has emerged from this is that the plethora of webinars that are going on and the landscape of knowledge share is really changed. I think we are lucky to have Sanjeev Chaudhary with us. A very big thank you to you, sir, and also our president, Mr. Atulji. I mean, when you spoke about this development of an international curriculum for ICAI, I think this could be the game changer, So thanks all for everybody. And of course, Mahesh, not forgetting Mahesh at all, because he has been kind enough to take along with him our EP chapter, where, I have been just a couple of months back at their international conference, I told one of the committee members that why not, when you guys have a physical session, why don't you get us involved through the online? And I didn't wish it to happen this way, but it has come about. So anyway, thanks everybody. And I hope we keep meeting regularly. Yeah, thank you very much, Atulji and Sanjeev Chaudhary. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just a couple of remarks from my side. I mean, of course, we are among the first few chapters who have taken this initiative, holding a session on code of ethics. President sir mentioned there are a lot of hot topics, and somewhere around the process, topics like code of ethics falls off the crack. But when ethics falls off the crack, it is the reputation of the profession that is at stake. So it is important that we regularly hold the sessions on these subjects. Maybe they are not as interesting as perhaps a motivational session or a leadership thought, but at times it is important to have a strong foundation to build on. And I'm very thankful for our president, sir, that the moment I indicated to him that we are doing a session on ethics, in a couple of seconds, he said, I will be there and you go ahead with this session. So thank you, President sir, for your time and sparing your thoughts with us. And myself and Sanjeev sir have been discussing to have this session sometimes around October 2019 onwards. Sanjeev sir gave me the guidance that we should wait, Mahesh, because sometimes in the first quarter or second quarter of 2020, ICAI is going to bring about the regulation about when this new code is going to be effective. So that would be an ideal time. So around March, April, we connected with Sanjeev sir and he said it's a good time to go. We should plan something on this. And I'm glad to all my leaders from the GCC chapter who, of course, were very kind enough to accommodate my request to have this session at a short notice and have such a large audience. And I'm thankful for all the members who participated from different parts of the world to attend this event. And we look forward for more such events with joint collaboration with the chapters in and around the region. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you very much. And everybody else. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mahesh.
Vivek is also there in Canada. He's also attending.
Yes, sir.
Just saw Vivek is also there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Atulji. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.